A little girl stood at the palace gates, staring at a black van across the street. She wasn't looking at the guards. She wasn't taking photos like everyone else. She was just watching, waiting. The royal guard on duty noticed her stillness. Then he heard what she whispered. What she said next made him break 18 years of protocol and reach for his weapon. So what exactly did this little girl say? Before we reveal it, smash that subscribe button and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Now let's get into it. The midday sun over Buckingham Palace had that particular London glare, sharp and silvery, bouncing off polished brass and iron gates like broken glass. Tourists swarmed everywhere, phones up, kids bouncing on their toes, everyone jostling for that perfect shot before the changing of the guard. It was organised chaos the way it always was, controlled mayhem, wrapped in ceremony. Sergeant Nathan Hale had seen it 1,000 times before, 37 years old, 12 years with the Grenadier Guards, and 6 more before that with the Royal Military Police. He stood rigid at the southwest gate, scarlet tunic pressed sharp as a knife edge, bearskin hat casting shadows across eyes that never stopped moving. To the tourists snapping selfies, he was part of the scenery, a living statue in a red coat. But Nathan Hale wasn't just standing there looking pretty. Every muscle in his body was trained for one thing, watching for what didn't belong. 12 years of ceremonial duty hadn't dulled those instincts. It had sharpened them. Because when you're responsible for protecting one of the world's most famous landmarks, you learn that danger doesn't always announce itself with sirens and explosions. Sometimes it whispers. His boots were planted like tree roots. His SA-80 rifle cradled with the casual ease of someone who'd carried one through 2 tours in Afghanistan. His face showed nothing, but his eyes tracked everything. Tour groups clustering near the gates. A couple arguing quietly about camera settings. American teenagers asking loudly why the guards never blink or anything. Standard Tuesday afternoon at the palace. That's when he noticed the black van. Nothing dramatic about it. Just sitting in the loading zone across the street, hazard lights off, engine idling. Looked like any other delivery vehicle you'd see in central London. Tinted windows, commercial plates, parked legally. But it had been there for 23 minutes. Hale knew because he'd been counting. Most vehicles in that zone never lingered past 10 minutes. Couriers came and went. Police units idled briefly. This one just sat. The driver was a shadow behind tinted glass, hadn't gotten out, hadn't opened a window, hadn't even adjusted his mirrors, just waiting. Hale shifted his weight slightly, widening his peripheral view. Something about that van crawled under his skin like an itch he couldn't scratch. Call it instinct. Call it paranoia. Call it 18 years of learning to spot the things that were just slightly off. As the crowd surged forward for a better view of the ceremonial rotation, Hale caught sight of her, a little girl, standing alone at the front barrier, 9 years old, maybe 10. Pale blue dress, white trainers, blonde hair pulled into a lopsided ponytail, like someone had done it in a hurry. Clean, presentable. Nothing obviously wrong at first glance. Except she wasn't doing what kids do at palace gates. She wasn't bouncing on her toes, wasn't pestering adults for photos, wasn't mimicking the guards like half the children there. She just stood perfectly still, small hands wrapped around a white stuffed lamb, staring across the street. At the black van. Hale watched her for 30 seconds. She didn't blink much. Every time someone stepped in front of her, she shifted just enough to keep the van in sight. Her knuckles had gone white against the lamb's matted wool. He scanned for her parents. A couple nearby were absorbed in their phones. Could be hers, but they weren't paying attention. The woman kept trying to get the perfect Instagram shot, while the man fiddled with his camera settings. Neither had looked at the girl in minutes. She took a step forward. Her shoe touched the edge of the rope barrier, not crossing it, just testing. like someone checking how close they could get to the edge of a cliff. That's when she looked at him. Really looked. Eye contact that cut through the crowd noise like a blade. Her mouth moved slightly, like she was thinking about saying something but couldn't find the words. Then she glanced away quickly, back toward the van. Hale felt something cold slide down his spine. There was no wonder in her expression, no excitement, no curiosity about the palace, or the guards, or the ceremony unfolding around her, just the kind of quiet calculation you see in someone who's been taught to watch for danger. The van's engine gave a soft rumble, still idling. The sound barely cut through the crowd noise, but Hale caught it, a mechanical purr in the background, like a predator breathing. The girl stepped back, returning to her original position. She clutched the lamb tighter, her thumb working over its worn ear in this nervous, repetitive motion. Then she started pacing, slowly, deliberately, parallel to the rope barrier. Not random wandering, this was methodical. She was checking the van's position from different angles, like someone planning an escape route. Twice, she glanced over her shoulder. The second time, Hale followed her gaze. Nothing behind her, but more tourists. She came back to her spot after a minute, now slightly closer to Hale's post. Her lips were pressed into a thin line. She stared at the ground, took a breath, then looked up directly at him. And then she spoke. Just 2 steps back from the barrier, almost hidden behind a group of teenagers filming TikToks, she lifted her chin and said something Hale almost missed. Her voice was soft, nearly drowned by the crowd, but her mouth formed each word clearly. "They said they'd take me again." The phrase hit Hale like a physical blow. Small words, quiet words, but they carried the weight of absolute terror. He didn't move, couldn't break position. Protocol held him like iron chains, but everything inside him shifted into high alert. A child staring at a van. Words no innocent kid should ever say. And that careful, practiced way she'd whispered them, like someone who'd learned the hard way to be afraid. She wasn't confused. She wasn't making it up. She was giving him information. And suddenly, Sergeant Nathan Hale wasn't looking at a tourist crowd anymore. He was watching a trap getting ready to spring. The girl, who said her name was Amelie when he'd asked, kept that same position near the barrier, close enough to speak to him, far enough to look like she was just another tourist kid getting restless. But Hale could see the tension in every line of her small body. The way she held herself like someone expecting a blow, the rapid blinking, the death grip on that stuffed lamb. He stayed locked in place, statue still, but his mind was racing. They said they'd take me again. Not someone might take me, not I'm scared of strangers. Again. Meaning it had happened before. Meaning she knew exactly what was waiting for her in that van. The crowd around her churned with typical palace energy. A tour guide waved a miniature flag, describing guard rotations to a cluster of Japanese tourists. Kids pressed their faces against the ceremonial rope, trying to make the guards laugh. Normal Tuesday chaos. But the girl remained an island of stillness in all that movement. She started pacing again. 3 steps left, 2 steps back, never taking her eyes off the van for long. Each time she moved, Hale got a better look at the vehicle. The license plate had a thin plastic cover over it. Designed to reduce glare, maybe, but to someone with his training, it looked tampered with. Smudged edges. Possibly switched. No company markings on the sides. No delivery schedule visible. No movement from within. Just presence, just waiting. Hale began a mental countdown. If that van didn't move in 5 minutes, he'd signal the palace security team. Low priority alert, just a routine check. That plan died when the girl moved again. Not the careful testing steps from before. This time her whole posture changed. Her shoulders dropped. Her grip on the lamb loosened slightly. Resignation. Like someone who'd just heard orders they didn't want to follow, but knew they had no choice. She pressed both hands against the rope barrier and stared at the van with the focus of someone trying to summon courage. Her eyes were bright, but no tears came. When she spoke again, it was louder, meant for him to hear. They said if I told, they'd hurt my mum. That's when 18 years of military training collided with something much older and more primitive. The part of him that remembered being a father's son. The part that knew what it looked like when a child tried to protect someone else instead of themselves. She wasn't lying, she wasn't confused, she was trapped. Hale shifted his boots slightly, subtle, barely noticeable, but enough to unlock his stance. His eyes swept the van one more time, taking in tire angles, escape routes, the narrow lane behind the palace. The van's engine revved once, low, deliberate, ready. The girl was about to be taken again. And Sergeant Nathan Hale made a decision that would have court-martialed him in wartime. He stepped off his mark. The ripple effect was immediate. Tourists gasped, phones lifted, some laughed, thinking it was part of the show. But there was no ceremonial precision to his movement, no parade ground flourish. Just a soldier walking towards someone who needed help. One deliberate step after another. His rifle stayed angled down, but his shoulders carried purpose. Not the rigid formality of ceremony, but the loose, predatory tension of someone moving into a situation he understood perfectly. The girl turned as he approached, eyes flicking toward him in quick, nervous jerks. She took a half step back. "Miss," he said quietly, voice warm enough not to spook her. "Where are your parents?" Her answer came cracked and brittle. "Inside the palace, I think." "You wandered out here?" "No. They told me to wait by the gates, said they'd come back for me." "Who told you that?" She didn't answer. Instead, she looked past his shoulder, toward the van. That was all Hale needed to know. He raised two fingers toward a security steward on the perimeter wall. Military shorthand, nothing that would alarm civilians. The steward reached for his radio. Behind him, the black van edged forward half a foot, testing clearance, positioning for movement. "Control, this is post 8, Hale murmured into his hidden mic. "Suspicious vehicle, south boundary. Civilian minor, possibly under threat, requesting discreet police response." "Copy post 8. Stand by." The girl suddenly stepped closer, almost whispering into the red wool of his tunic. "He said they'd be nice this time, said I wouldn't have to sleep in the van again." Hale's jaw flexed once. She was remembering, not imagining, remembering details, conditions, specific threats. The black van's driver door opened. A man leaned out, sunglasses, faded polo shirt, thinning hair. He waved casually and smiled with the practiced ease of someone who'd done this before. "Hey there, sweetheart. Found you. Sorry about that, officer. She's a wanderer." Hale didn't respond. The man continued, voice honey smooth. "She's with me. Family friend. Her mum asked me to pick her up. She gets turned around easy. Bit of fresh air, and off she goes." He laughed. Nobody else did. The girl pressed closer to Hale's side. "I don't want to go," she whispered. The man heard that. His tone sharpened slightly. "Don't be rude now. I told you we'd get ice cream after." Hale stepped between them, one smooth movement that put his body like a wall between the van and the girl. "Remain in your vehicle," he said clearly. "Authorities are en route." The man hesitated, then opened his door wider and leaned against it casually. "Mate, you're making this awkward. I've got places to be." From his new angle, Hale could see into the van's cab. Fast food wrappers scattered across the passenger seat, a road atlas with torn pages, and behind the centre console, just visible in the shadows, a roll of duct tape, wet wipes, a black nylon strap, partially uncoiled. No car seat, no family photos. No juice boxes or snacks you'd expect if this was really about picking up a kid. Just tools. The man's voice dropped, losing its fake friendliness. "Look, I don't know what game you think you're playing, but I'm not the bad guy here. You're making this little girl more scared than she needs to be." Hale's hand moved toward his rifle sling. Engine off. Hands on the dashboard. Do not approach this child. The van clicked into gear. The man stayed where he was, half in, half out of the vehicle. The girl didn't speak. Sergeant Nathan Hale found himself balanced on the knife's edge between ceremony and war. One more move from that van, and 18 years of protocol were going straight out the window. The afternoon air carried the acrid smell of exhaust from the van's engine, a mechanical breath that seemed to hang between them like a threat. Hale took another step forward. The crowd behind him was beginning to understand this wasn't part of the show. Phones kept recording, but the energy had shifted. Instead of excitement, there was tension, uncertainty. The driver leaned further out, one hand resting on the doorframe. His smile had gotten tighter, more calculated, the kind of expression someone wears when they're being watched and trying to pass a test they're not sure they can pass. She's afraid of uniforms, he offered lightly. That's why she's acting up. Annabelle gets like this when she's nervous. The girl didn't move. Hale spoke over his shoulder. What's your name? Long pause, then barely audible. Amelie, but he calls me something else. Hale shifted his body fully between the child and the vehicle. His rifle adjusted in its sling, not raised, not threatening, but ready. Vehicle engaged, he said into his mic. Driver claiming guardianship. Child not confirming. Prepare for escalation. The man forced a chuckle. Come on, let's not make this a circus. Just a simple mix-up. I've got paperwork in the back somewhere. Her mum and I sorted everything out. Hale's eyes flicked to the dashboard. No car seat. No family photos. No children's toys. But there was electrical tape stuffed under the cup holder, something that looked like zip ties caught in the rubber floor mat. The girl trembled behind him. He stepped back slightly, just enough so his leg touched hers. Stay right there, he said quietly. Then, to the driver, turn off the engine, hands where I can see them. The man's expression shifted, not frustrated, measured, testing. You don't understand what you're interfering with. This isn't your call. I'm making it mine. She's not your responsibility. She is now. The man's fake smile disappeared completely. You think that rifle means something out here? You're just part of the tourist show. Stand there and look impressive. That's your job. My job, Hale replied evenly, is protecting people who can't protect themselves. The man's hand moved toward the gear shift. The van rumbled louder, engine revving, transmission engaged. You don't intimidate me, the man said. I'm not trying to intimidate you, Hale answered. I'm trying to keep you exactly where you are. Behind him, the girl's small hand gripped the hem of his tunic. That's when Sergeant Nathan Hale brought his rifle to ready position, not aimed, not pointed at anyone, just lifted from casual carry to firm, shoulder-ready hold, muzzle toward the pavement, but braced for immediate action. A clear message. The crowd behind him went dead silent. Across the plaza, palace security officers started running in their direction. Post 8 to control, Hale said calmly. Weapon readied, not aimed. Driver refusing compliance. Need immediate backup. The man raised both hands mockingly. Oh, brilliant. A toy soldier who wants to play hero. Hale's voice dropped to something cold and final. Engine off now. You don't have the authority. I have a frightened child behind me, Hale replied. I don't need authority. He stepped forward once more. The rifle barrel remained pointed down, but his grip was steady. His eyes never left the man's face. Behind him, the girl didn't cry or speak, but Hale felt the change in her posture. A loosening. Like she'd been holding her breath for hours and could finally exhale. The man glanced toward the growing cluster of security personnel approaching from multiple directions, then back at Hale. His window of opportunity was closing fast, and he knew it. Sirens began as a distant whisper, rolling in from the London streets like approaching thunder. The man in the van had gone completely still. No more gesturing, no more fake charm, just watching. calculating, measuring whatever move he thought he had left. The ceremonial plaza had transformed. Tourists stood frozen, hundreds of people witnessing something more intense than any military drill. Phones were still recording, but hands shook. Some visitors backed away, others whispered nervously to each other. The girl pressed her forehead against the red wool of Hale's coat. Her breathing came in short, irregular bursts, but she didn't speak. The first police car arrived without fanfare, fast but controlled, pulling up with professional efficiency. 2 uniformed officers stepped out, instantly assessing the scene. The senior constable approached with his hand near his holster, not touching it yet. "What's the situation?" Hale kept his weapon ready. "Driver claims family relationship. Child doesn't confirm. Suspicious materials visible in vehicle. No documentation offered." The man in the van exploded. "This is absolutely insane. I came to collect my niece, and now I'm being held at gunpoint by someone dressed like a Christmas ornament." The officer ignored him and looked at Hale. "The child? She yours?" "Don't know her real name," Hale said, "but she hasn't moved from behind me since he called her over." The officer crouched slightly, speaking gently toward the girl. "Love, do you know this man?" A pause, a small nod. Then, "I've seen him before. He's not family." The man's voice rose. "She's confused. I'm her godfather. This is complete harassment." 2 more police units rolled up, officers fanning out to secure the area. They began redirecting tourists, creating space around the van. Hale maintained his position. Then, without warning, movement from the left side of the van caught his eye. A second figure emerged from behind a cluster of parked bikes, younger man in a black hoodie, something metallic glinting in his hand. "Second suspect, left flank," Hale barked. The young man bolted. Police shouted. Civilians scattered. One officer gave immediate chase. The runner made it 5 steps before a plainclothes detective tackled him hard to the pavement near the palace gates. A small black bag flew from his hands, hit the ground and spilled open. Coiled rope, latex gloves, and a child's backpack with a pink unicorn patch. Gasps rose from the crowd. Some people screamed, others just stared in shock. 2 suspects, an officer called out. 1 fleeing, 1 contained. The driver stood up in his seat. "I don't know that guy. I've never seen him before in my life." The girl behind Hale started shaking uncontrollably. Hale had heard enough. He moved 3 solid steps toward the van, voice cutting through the chaos like steel. "Hands on the dashboard, right now." "Listen, mate. Now." The driver hesitated, then slowly placed both hands on the dashboard, knuckles white with tension. Officers surrounded the vehicle. One opened the rear doors and immediately stepped back. Inside was what looked like a mobile prison. Folded blankets, empty juice boxes, wet wipes, a small mattress. No safety equipment. No legal documentation. No toys that belonged to any specific child. Just a bottle of children's shampoo, a roll of duct tape still in its wrapper, and a woman's scarf tied to the interior wall. One officer glanced at Hale, face pale. "Jesus, you stopped it!" Hale didn't respond. He turned back to the girl. She was still pressed against his back, trembling from head to toe, but not crying, just holding that stuffed lamb like it was the only real thing left in the world. He knelt, slightly, rifle cradled but ready. "You're safe," he said simply. "No one's taking you anywhere." The black van was impounded within the hour. Police sealed the entire side lane with yellow tape, while forensics officers in white suits photographed every inch of the interior. The man in the hoodie, zip-tied and silent, was loaded into one patrol car. The driver, no longer protesting, sat cuffed in another. Sergeant Nathan Hale remained with the girl until child protection officers arrived. She answered their questions quietly, name, age, mother's details, but each word seemed to cost her something. Her hands never released the lamb. Even when the female officer wrapped a blanket around her shoulders and gently guided her toward the palace gatehouse, she kept looking back at Hale, like she was afraid that leaving his side would make the nightmare start again. Inside the gatehouse, Hale gave his statement. Twice. First to the response supervisor, then to detectives from Westminster CID. He didn't embellish or speculate, just facts. The van had remained stationary too long. The girl's behaviour indicated distress. Her words suggested prior victimization. The second suspect confirmed organised criminal activity. When detectives told him the driver was Glenn Taylor, on parole for prior offences involving children, Hale showed no reaction outwardly. Inside, his jaw locked like a steel trap. The girl was Amelie Grace Whitmore, age 9, reported missing 48 hours earlier from a bus stop in Brixton. Her mother had turned away for 10 seconds to take a phone call. When she looked back, Amelie was gone. Until today, there had been no leads. They were planning to disappear her completely, the detective said quietly. If you hadn't intervened... Hale didn't need him to finish that sentence. His shift wasn't over. After signing the final paperwork and answering the last questions, he walked back across the stone forecourt and resumed his post. Same spot, same stance. The afternoon light had softened, shadows stretching longer across the gates. Tourists had returned to their normal rhythms, posing, laughing, taking selfies beside him. If any had witnessed the earlier confrontation, they didn't mention it. To casual observers, nothing had changed. Sergeant Nathan Hale stood exactly as before, motionless, professional, precise. But something inside had shifted. His trigger finger held the memory of readiness. His eyes continued their endless sweep, but now every movement carried different weight. Not suspicion, not paranoia, just the quiet knowledge that sometimes the most important battles aren't fought on distant battlefields. Sometimes they happen on busy London streets, in broad daylight, when one person chooses to act while everyone else just watches. It was nearly 5 p.m. when the palace crowd thinned to its usual late afternoon lull. Families headed toward the parks, tour groups loaded onto waiting buses, the noise settling to a gentle hum. Hale remained at his post, still as carved stone. Occasional camera flashes popped from behind the rope line. Tourists posed and pointed, completely unaware that hours earlier he had stood in this exact spot and prevented something unspeakable. Then, without announcement, a woman stepped into view. She wasn't part of any tour group. No phone in hand, no souvenir bag over her shoulder, just holding tightly to the wrist of a small girl beside her. The girl wore a grey hoodie now, her pale blue dress visible underneath. Her hair had been properly brushed and pulled into a neat ponytail. She still carried the white lamb, its wool dirty and one ear hanging by threads. She looked up at him, didn't speak, didn't wave and didn't run, just stood there. Her mother looked uncertain, glancing between Hale and a nearby security officer who had clearly escorted them to this spot. She whispered something, probably asking permission, and the officer nodded. The woman knelt beside her daughter, murmuring softly. The girl took one step forward. Not close enough to touch. Not close enough to break protocol. Just close enough to be clearly seen. She looked up at him again. This man in red and black who had somehow known what no one else had noticed. Her eyes were clearer now, not wide with terror, but still carrying more than any child should have to bear. She didn't wave and she didn't smile. She simply lifted her chin and gave him one small, deliberate nod, like she was answering a question only he had asked, like she was saying, "I know what you did. I remember. I understand." Hale couldn't move. Couldn't respond, but his eyes, shadowed beneath the bearskin hat, softened just enough for her to see. Her mother stood and placed a gentle hand on her back. For a moment they stayed like that. Two worlds, connected by silence and understanding. Then the security officer stepped forward, guiding them back toward the main gates. They turned away, the girl glancing over her shoulder once more before climbing into the back of an unmarked police car. Her mother followed. The door closed softly. In seconds, they were gone. The tourists around Hale resumed their normal flow, none the wiser. But beneath the stillness of his ceremonial stance, Sergeant Nathan Hale exhaled slowly. No medals would be awarded, no headlines written, no crowd would applaud. Just the knowledge that a 9-year-old girl named Amelie had gone home to her family instead of vanishing forever into something too horrible to imagine. Because he'd listened when she whispered. Because he'd acted when everyone else just watched. Because sometimes the difference between a child sleeping safely in her own bed and disappearing forever comes down to one soldier who remembered that protecting the innocent is always more important than following rules. Would you have noticed what he noticed? Should royal guards have the authority to break protocol when they sense immediate danger? Have you ever seen something suspicious and done nothing? If this story showed you what these ceremonial soldiers really do, beyond standing for photos, smash that like button and show your respect. Hit subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss our daily Royal Guard stories. We upload new ones every single day. And if someone you know still thinks these guards are just for show, send them this video. They might never look at a ceremonial soldier the same way again. More incredible Royal Guard stories are appearing on your screen right now. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place.